Then there's the inner game of rehearsal. If you don't know the inner game, you should know it. There's a video. You don't have to buy the book. The book's a little harder to understand than the video. If you can get the video, do you have the video? That you should get. For GIA?
I have books.
Yeah, the GIA video on the inner game of music. Basically what the inner game of music says is that you're going to let the students help devise the rehearsal scheme. So inner game does imagery. See ifs. Role playing. Remove obstacles. So imagery. I try to, especially with younger kids, I try to ask them to do something. If I say to a kid, could you please play Dolce Molto Adagio? Now, not that I won't let them know what that means, but I might say, let me start over. I want them to play softly. I'll say, would you play this section like you came in after your curfew? That your parents said you had to be in at 12, and it's 12:30, and they're already in bed, and you got to walk by their bedroom. How would you move? Could we play that like this? Now, I think everybody could identify with that. Or I'll say something like, play this, don't wake the baby. Have you ever seen a waterfall? Have you ever seen a sunrise? And what I'm saying is, well, could you do this with a crescendo, but a smooth crescendo that just gets brighter? But if I give them some kind of imagery, sunrise. Now, sometimes pieces will give you imagery. For instance, if you're playing Symphony Fantastique, there's a story there. There's a program. Sometimes you got to make up a program. I'll give you, for instance, anybody know the piece Cachin Chorale by Clifton Williams? Well, Clifton Williams has no program notes on this, but it was his last piece. And when he was writing it, he knew he was dying of cancer. Now, what does Cachin mean? Anybody know?
Jewish death service, or it's
No, they're thinking Kaddish. That's Kaddish. And then there's a connection with Macbeth's Kaddish to Cachin Chorale. Kacha is a chase, a hunt, race. So it's Cachin Chorale. Well, I think this piece is about, you've heard of people saying the life's race or the rat race. So this piece starts, ba 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 da ba ba, and then we get bum ba zagada, and there's snare drum one. Everything's driving. It's like you're young, you're vital. In the middle of the piece, it goes into 12/8. So you're going, something up. That's middle age. You slow down. Trust me, you slow down. You still have the energy, but you slow down. Then it's interesting. Towards the end of the piece, he plays Morse code for the person he wrote the piece for, but it's going ba ba da ba ba ba, and a chime goes gong, and everything stops. Ba ba da ba ba ba, gong, gong, and a third one, bum. For whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. The next chord is a C and a D flat in double octaves. Reality. We're not going to live forever. That's my belief. It's this heart-wrenching brass anger. Then it subsides, and it's this really quite beautiful lyrical thing, like you're remembrances of your life. All the good times, all the wonderful times, the wonderful people. And then, you guys don't know this because it doesn't happen anymore, but us older folks knew. What happened to a light bulb before it was going to burn out? It would get brighter. All of a sudden, this piece, this bass drum starts going. And this chorale comes back with a vengeance, like one more drive, and then it just stops. And then there's just this little quiet postlude. Now, I only know one Clifton Williams piece other than that ends softly. So I think this is about life. And this is about dealing with that aspect of finding out that you're not going to live. Now, I tell that to the audience. He doesn't say that. I tell that to the audience, but the audience and the students can understand that. And then when they hear this, I mean, I've had people crying in this piece, in the audience, because they could relate to it. Well, I mean, my idea is not to make the audience cry, but if I can get the students into the feeling of music by giving them some kind of imagery, wow. And they really get into it. And I didn't have to play something that they know, because they know what grief is. They know what losing a loved one or dealing with those issues of sickness are. And what music does is present what life is. That's what art does. Presents life. So if you can use imagery, see ifs. Let's play this again and see if you're playing longer or shorter than the norm. Now basically what I'm saying is, you play shorter, you're okay. You play a little longer, you don't play at all. Just kidding. But instead of going all the way through the ensemble, what you're giving them is an awareness. What you're asking them to say is, listen to your articulation, but see if you're playing longer or shorter. And what they tend to do then is start to adjust, and they'll match articulations. Oh, I forgot to put one up here. This one's cool too, extremes. If you want a detached style, not short, but detached, say, all right, play this as long as you can. La, 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 la. Now play it as short as you can. Da, da, da. Now put it in the middle. Da, da, da. So when you do both ends, then they find the middle. Now, inner game takes a while, but the students are invested in the activity rather than you constantly telling them. Role play. I'll say, we're playing the Star Spangled Banner, and everybody just, we play it all the time in marching band. We play it all the time. I said, but let's say we were invited to the White House. Our band was sitting on the White House lawn, and all the dignitaries that were coming to visit the White House came out, and we were asked to play this. Would you play that any differently? Now I'm going to tell you another story. Some of you look familiar. Did anybody play in the honors band at IUP? No? Yes, I thought you did. I thought I said. Yeah, so this happened years ago. Somebody was saying they were from Penn Trafford. Dave Cornelius was in this honors band. The band director, he will vouch for me. So we're playing Chester. And Chester isn't going very well.
Imagine that.
And I said to him, would you play any differently if the composer was here? And they went, I said, wait a minute. I went in my office, and I had an autographed picture of William Schumann. And I put it on the chalkboard. I said, here he is. And he wants to hear his piece. I'm telling you, it was unbelievable how much better it got. Now, what they did was they focused. They really focused and started to give all their energy to the piece, which they weren't doing. I could have said, could you put more energy in? You guys are lazy. Come on, put more energy and focus. But from an imagery standpoint or a role-playing standpoint, I brought this picture. Now, you can't have a picture of every composer. I can remember doing 4 Scottish dances by Malcolm Arnold. Ring, 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 bop it up, a little up, and I set this whole thing up. I had a student, Lonnie, she played bagpipes. So I said, what does this sound like, this opening? What does it sound like? They said, bagpipes. I said, yeah. All of a sudden, down the hall, you hear, and Lonnie came walking in, playing bagpipes. Well, it freaked everybody out. Loved it. Now, again, you can't always have a bagpiper, but what it is, again, this role-playing kind of thing or imagery kind of thing that you're able to get them into the moment from that activity. the thing we did yesterday, stand up if you have the melody. What it did is showed how Holst orchestrated the piece, basically. It was a fun activity, but what it did was show you how the piece is orchestrated, made the clarinets feel good about themselves. Another one in this is use models. So a lot of times when I want to use a model for an accent with a decay, I'll have the chimes hit a note. Bang! And say, everybody try to emulate that sound. So you can use non-like instruments or like instruments. The best thing to do is this. So, who plays third clarinet? So to go to the third clarinet and say, could you play your part there? Now whenever you do that, in an honor band to a third clarinet, the third clarinet immediately hemorrhages from every orifice. Blood. But what you have to do is listen, see? What you do is you listen to see if one of those players in not a first part is playing it right. So if you can get a third clarinet, play that for, what's your name? Evan, play that for us, Evan. Do you hear that? That's exactly how that should go. Now Evan goes. If everybody could play those 4 bars just like Evan, it'll be exactly right. Versus play. That's terrible. Play. You go to Youngstown? Play. You should just kill yourself. Play. Well, you've seen that though. See, the old school was to go down the line and find the people, call the people out that could not play. Embarrass them, intimidate them. Now there's a fine line between intimidation and accountability. But, I've said to my ensemble, don't make me have to hear each one of you play this. I really don't want to do that. I don't want to waste the ensemble's time, but some of you can't play this. Even though I know it's you that can't play it. No, sir. Even though I know it's this person that can't play it, I'm not going to single them out. The only time I try to single out a person is when they're playing it right. So if you can say, all right, Evan just played bars 34 to 43. How about everybody find a spot in the piece, and for Wednesday's rehearsal, come back and you be the expert on that. And you show us how that goes. Well, right now I'm just getting them to practice. You see? But, you know, the other third clarinet player says, Evan can do this, I can do it. I've known Evan, I'm better than Evan. But what I've done is I've used a student to demonstrate how good it's supposed to be, not intimidate them and say, that's awful. Don't get me wrong, I hold them accountable. I have to be the conscience of the group. As Dr. Morehouse said yesterday, where she said to you, how many of you, it was during Chester, how do you like how this is going or something like that? She was being the conscience of the group. And you all said, nah. So she was just giving you something to say, let's get going on this, right? That's how you be the conscience of the group. She didn't call anybody out. Other intervene, removal of obstacles. So like there's this long woodwind run. And I'll say to woodwinds, all right, make sure you tongue the first note, make sure you tongue the last note, and they're together. Just start with that. You'll be surprised how, you know, the technical side, you relieve some of the pressures of the playing, and all of a sudden it works. Another removal of obstacles is close your eyes and let's play this chord. So in other words, you're removing any of the other senses but your ears to try to tune this chord. You can use the room. So, how would I use this chord? No. Give me a second. So look at the blocks on the wall. I would like the note length to be the block and this much space between the notes. Ba, 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 ba. Not cut in half. More note than space. Again, that just gives them a visual reference using the room. A lot of times tiles on the floor. A lot of times lights. You know, when you're fluorescent lights, there's always 2 or 3 that are either dim or burn out. You say, this is how the chord sounds. There's first clarinet, there's second clarinet, there's third clarinet. So that dim one is second clarinet. You're not playing strong enough. You've got the third of the chord, it's the most important note. So. Now, this takes long, but you can interject these things into rehearsal so that the students feel that they're part of the rehearsal. The next thing I want to show you was this rehearsal checklist, which a student of mine did. He was a graduate student. Robert Hunter was a graduate student of mine. I think he was just trying to get a good grade. But he went to rehearsals with myself and my colleague and wrote down everything we did. I'm sure he just wrote down everything we did that was good. Because there's nothing on here that is bad. But basically, basically what he did was write down everything we did in a week in rehearsal that he thought was good, which I was pretty amazed. I said, I'm amazed that I did all these things. He goes, actually, Dr. Waynesburg, my colleague, he did most of them, Dr. But let me go through these, because the idea would be you always have a one or two trusted students in your band that are kind of your friend. They're in tune with what you want to do. They're pro you. And you could give this to them and say, if I do this during the week, check one off. So, step up to the podium with energy, no waiting. Now, yesterday, I was a little bit under the weather. But if I walked up going, all right, you've already set the tone for rehearsal. You've got to look like it's, you never let them see you sweat. Never let them see you not happy about making music. So you have to come up to the podium with energy. Demonstrate the ability to give feedback without stopping or losing energy. See, if you don't know the piece and you stop and you go, for instance, you go, no, wait. Boom, all the energy's just gone down. You have to, the reason you stop, you have to stop with energy. Stop, comment, and go. Let the group know why you're stopping. Have you ever been in a rehearsal where they say, no, go back. No, go back. And you don't know what you're going back. I remember in a rehearsal once, I probably should have been kicked out. I raised my hand. I said, I don't know what we're going back for. What can I fix? Not, if somebody like honks or something very obvious. But if you stop, there's got to be a reason you stop. And it could be as mundane as, no, I heard some funny note there. Can we go again? Wait, could I hear clarinets? Jimmy? No, it's an F sharp. Let's go back, right? But the problem is, if you stop, don't go, beginning. Stop with a comment. The reason you stop is to give them a comment. Step off the podium occasionally to get closer to the section you're working. Also step off for non-musical announcements. I never stand on the podium and go, so we've got an extra rehearsal, so-and-so, we're going on tour, so I always get off the podium. Because when I stand here, they know we're going to make sound. Now, some high school band directors have like the Starship Enterprise bridge. Then something moves here, something moves here, bassoons drop into the floor. They've got, radio, they can TV. Make it the music-making place. Don't collect fruit money, don't collect trip money at the podium, do it somewhere else. I also would say have a podium. If you're tall, have a short podium. If you're short, have a tall podium. But have a podium because that defines your space. Make comments directed to the point. Oh, also step off the podium. It really helps, especially when you walk through the woodwinds and go back to the trumpets. It's like the parting of the Red Sea, man. And you hear the flute players as you walk by go get on. Because they have to be really good right up front. And you go back to the trumpet. When you get in their space, they don't want you in their space. They want you to go back to your podium. Get out of our space. But I'll tend to do that. I'll walk right to them.
You guys don't know how lucky you are being in 108, because I can't get off the podium, there's nowhere to go. Right? Wait till the chapel's built, yeah.
Hear everything and give visual feedback. Visual feedback. Like, remember yesterday I went, that's not quite right. Or yes, that's right. Interrupt the group with comments so that there's energy in the stop. The way you stop should be directly proportional to the reason. That's not quite right. And he says it later. You stop with the energy of the piece. So if you're doing Irish tune, you don't go, what are you doing, trombones? What are you doing? You say, oh gosh, what an ugly sound! Or you're not going George Washington Bridge, it's not going. So you've got to be the personality of the music. You can't be your personality all the time. But Irish too, right? If you're doing that, you go, oh, trombones. That sound doesn't work here. And I mean, that's as intense as you can get. And then they'll say, stamp the L-Dennis. Let your love of the music show. If you don't love music, go do something else. You've got to be more than that. You have to love music. You have to love sharing music. You can't just love teaching. You have to love music. And if you ever lose the love of music, then you shouldn't be teaching. Because it's your passion. We were talking about the word, there's passion. Passion is the word. There's passion for music. So let your love of that show. So don't pick a piece that you don't love. Because you're going to have a hard time showing that to the group. Use gesture to replace words. We understand that. Give clear directions so that there's no confusion. Use humor with good timing. That all makes sense. Cue entrances to lead confidence to performers. Understand when the composer has made an unreasonable request and then provide an alternative. So let's say you want to play Jim Cornell's arrangement of the Cowboys by John Williams. Digga 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 da. Well, your horns can't double time. So what you have is one go da digga da digga da digga digga da, and the other go digga da digga da digga da digga da. And you have got one that can double tongue. Okay, they play it. I've done this. There's a run in the woodwinds. I've got a couple people that can play it, but I've got a couple people that can't. So I have them play different notes in it, like every eighth note. So that, or that they, let's say it's diddle 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 diddle, and they can't. My clarinets can't slur 4 and 4 and 4, but they can go beedle. They can slur the whole thing. So then I'll have some clarinets go do dee dee dee, and they'll tongue each of those notes. So you obscure that. I can remember. I'll tell you a story. Sherry Phillips was her name. She was an English major. I was teaching at Campbell University in North Carolina. She was an English major in my band. And we were doing Robert Jager's Chorale and Toccata. And there was a section of it where we just couldn't play. And finally I said, I don't think we can't play this section. I don't think we should play this piece. I said, it isn't that you're not working hard, it's just above our heads. And Sherry raised her hand and said, well, Dr. Stamp, do we have to play it perfect to learn something from it? And sometimes we say, I don't have an English horn, I won't play this piece. Well, no, you rewrite the English horn part. Well, I don't have good enough horns, I can't play this piece. No, or I don't have horns that'll double tongue. But everybody else could play the piece, and you could learn from the piece. I say you play the piece. Have them play a lot and listen to you talk very little. If it was a good rehearsal, they should be tired at the end. Also, if I see a student do this and look at the clock in the back of the room, I know that I haven't been doing my job. Use analogies to explain different concepts. That's an inner game thing. You've heard, if you can't hear the melody, you're playing too loud. That's one of the easiest ones. But see if you're playing louder than the melody. That's an inner game kind of thing. Go after what was just corrected. The worst thing they can do as a player is I say, what's your name? Abby, I say, Abby, could you play that alto solo a little bit louder and your F sharp's a little bit sharp, so think down on that. We get to Abby's solo and I'm doing this. And Abby's over here. And Abby goes, well, did I play it good enough that he thinks it's fine? Has he given up on me because it's no good? So if you ask somebody to do something, next time you go through it, then you look at him and go, that was right. Or you go, close. Or you go, yep, that was good. Follow up. A lot of times we'll follow up and it'll be wrong again because we thought we addressed it, we think that was good enough. Offer specific solutions, not general suggestions. Clarinets, you're out of tune. Yeah. Could you help us a little bit? The old conducting going, I had a piccolo player. Actually, she's working for Pennsylvania Public Instruction in the arts. Jamie, I don't know what Jamie's maiden name is, but Jamie was a piccolo player. I was talking about communicating with your ensemble, visually communicating with your ensemble. I said, well, Jamie, we have a good relationship. She goes, yeah, if you mean you do this or do this to me. In other words, play sharper, play flatter. But that type of thing, and if I hear somebody sharp, I'll go like that. Lower your pitch. Not just go, you're out of tune. Listen carefully while conducting without sacrificing energy. In other words, don't go all of a sudden go, I'm listening now. Okay, I'm back in the piece. Notice discrepancies in score and parts. There are always a lot of them. Know the score so that you can keep your ears and eyes on the players, or your eyes and ears on the players. What's that Von Bülow said, Hans von Bülow? Your score shouldn't be in the head. No. Your head should be in the score should be in your head. Have a rehearsal plan, but be flexible to accommodate the needs of the players. In other words, if you had a rehearsal plan and they're almost getting something, but you had said you'd get to this point, I wouldn't get to this point before you got this done. Don't restrict your rehearsal plan based on some preconceived notion. Understand the instruments you conduct, know their limitations, look like the music, address the group in the style and energy of the music. Be the composer's advocate. Accept no excuses. Put the responsibility on the individual when appropriate. When I do that, I'll say clarinets. That's not very good. I won't say Abby. That's not very good. Now, it's a little bit difficult when you have a piccolo player. One piccolo player. You can't go piccolos. That's not very good. But basically, if I'm criticizing, I talk about the instrument, not the individual. Know when to work a section in a sense to move on. So in other words, you're getting to some place and you're working on the clarinets and they can't play it quite right, and the whole band's just sitting there. But what most conductors will go, yeah, okay, let's go back. And what I'll say is, clarinets, that's really not any better. And we expect it to be better because you're holding all of us back. That's again being the conscience. But I don't want everybody sitting there and dying. Admit your mistakes. You ever been in a rehearsal where a conductor misses a meter change and then stops and says, clarinets? And everybody goes, no, what, that's supposed to be a 3/8. What, that's 3/8? If you mess up, say, I'm sorry, that was my fault. Now, the problem is if you start messing up more than the ensemble, then you haven't done your homework. So if you're apologizing to the ensemble more than you're actually working with them to improve their performance, then you haven't learned your music. Can I keep going? Okay. Be uninhibited. Recognize hard work, the expected of others. I never expect my students to work harder than me. And a lot of teachers tend to do that. Call individuals, achieve the desires of the composer even requires musical cheating. Musical cheating would be that rhythmic change I made, or something like that to make it work. Call the individuals by name when you can, only if they're doing it well. Abby, great solo. Saxophones, that wasn't very good. So I'll call the person by name when they do something right, and I want to praise them. I won't call them by name if they've messed up, or if I'm correcting them. Help the players understand the role of their parts. Demonstrate the ability to show that's right, not quite, unacceptable, non-verbally. So, I'll do this, or I'll go. But I've got to determine whether I want to stop again and fix it or not. Show the students where to listen. That's like we were talking about yesterday when the clarinet came in. I know the clarinet can count 7 beats, I said, but what we're basically doing is saying, this is the solo. Listen there. This is what we're listening to. Expect players to learn while you're working with another section of the group. I ask the players questions. So, was that sharp or flat? Uh-oh. Because have you ever seen that Far Side cartoon? There's a Far Side cartoon where the guy's sitting, his dog's sitting there, and he goes, fetch my slippers. Go get the paper, Sparky. Oh, fetch my slippers, Sparky. Go get the paper, Sparky. Run, get your dish, Sparky. And then what Sparky hears is, oh, Sparky. Oh, Sparky. You guys are the same way. You sit there and all of a sudden it's clarinets. So you've got to keep them engaged. You ask them to be listening. Allow enough time for players to use their pencils. Do not tolerate repeated mistakes. We just fixed that, folks. We just fixed that. Let's go back and analyze it again. Don't expect more from the group than you expect from yourself. Be able to demonstrate with your voice or another instrument what you want to hear. Now, I'm a percussionist. I had to learn to play the wind instruments, but I don't play any of the wind instruments as well as my students do at IUP. And if I did, then I would have it right next to my podium, and I'd say, this is how you played this. This is how it's supposed to sound. But I play marimba. I can't go, this is how you play it. My melodic instrument is not wind driven. But if I played a wind instrument, I'd say, listen to the difference. This is how you played this articulation. This is how it's supposed to be played. I would have it right next to me. But I sing. I sing at the students. You went, dia da da dia da da, it's dia da dia da. It's slur 3, tongue 1. And you went, dia da da. Use a quality baton as your instrument. Be sensitive to the frustration level of the group. That's what I was talking about before. Alternate between meticulous work and large sections played. Use we instead of I or me. Learn that in choral conducting. Play that for me. Does that sound like, now I did a little bit of face there, but if I said, Abby, can we hear that? Hear how different that sounds? Could we all play the beginning of letter A? I want to hear letter A. See, it doesn't sound like we're in it together. Leave the I and the me. Play that for me. Play that for us. Could we hear that? I want to hear that. Play that for me. Do this for me. Do that for me. Shine my shoes. Go get me crackers. Where possible, position the clock in the back of the room. I told you about that. Always be the conscience of the ensemble. And it's a little bit easier with college kids. I just say, this doesn't sound like the wind ensemble that I think we should sound like. In fact, this doesn't even sound like a college ensemble today. Now, if there's some reason that's happening, let me know. But this isn't where we're going to stay, folks. Now, that's not saying, you stink, Abby, and you should change your major. That's not that kind of approach. I can say it to Abby because we visited today. It's holding them accountable without intimidating them. Confront the instrument, not the person. Maintain a professional attitude toward individual appearance and punctuality. Yeah, it's not quite that way at the college. Because, sometimes I go, do you really now my professors aren't that bad, but some of the professors, did you look in the mirror today before you came to school? Because see, the reason, now I'm not wearing a tie today because it's Saturday. But I wear a tie don't I? Don't I wear a tie every day to work? Now it's not because I'm chaired. It's because I'm trying to bring respect to my job and to you. To show you that, I mean, the reason we dress up when we go to church is not because God likes ties and whatever, but because we dress up because we're bringing our best selves to that place, wherever that may be. It doesn't have to be church, but that same concept is I think you need to look like a professional when you get in front of the group. You don't want to look like one of the students. That makes you hip and cool with the students. Yeah, that you don't need to do that. You need to look like a professional, because those students are going to believe everything you do. Everything you do is going to influence them. I had a parent once tell me, you have way more influence on my son than I do right now. And I appreciate you being in his life. I don't use the word awesome a lot. That's an awesome responsibility. It isn't one you accept, but you have to do. So the way you present yourself as a person is very important. Use every minute of the rehearsal. It's the only time you have to teach music. And the last one, eliminate the word okay when addressing the group. That isn't really what we mean. Everybody begin at 17, okay? I think, Abby, if I said that, you should say, no, it's not okay with me. I don't really like 17. You like 17? No, it's not okay. Okay is not what we mean. Did you know what I said to you yesterday? Everybody with me? Did you hear me say that? Is everybody with me? Everybody understand? That's what the okay means. You're not asking for their okay. What you're asking is, do they understand? Everybody, beginning of 12. Everybody there? Everybody with me? Okay? No, you don't want to say okay. You're not asking for their permission. Questions? So that's
There's something, the conducting thing when you were nonverbal completely. You know what I'm talking about? Where does that fit?
Oh, when you do the silent rehearsal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did the Alaska All-State in November, and I did 45 minutes total silence. I didn't say anything, except the first clarinet player, I said, when I point to you, play a B-flat tuning note. And that's good when you're sick, you know, or it's good when you feel like the rehearsal has been kind of mundane, and you might say to him, I'd probably say to him, I'm going to do this whole rehearsal without saying a word. So you have to have somebody, you go 1 before 23. You have somebody yell that out to the group. I remember I was playing something, I looked at the euphonium and they made a mistake, and this girl raised her hand. I went, so we did it again. So the euphonium made a mistake, and I looked back at her, and she went. And I looked at her and I went, she hauled off and smacked me. So I walk over, and the kid's like, I walk over, I said, he stood up, and I took his chair and moved it over, and then I stood by her chair and went, so it missed him, and I said, had him sit down and start again. Of course, the band director said, you couldn't have had a better kid get smacked. But it's what it does is it focuses the group. I did the whole, because you're not saying anything, so they have to look at you. And then when you say, good morning, they go, whew, that you're actually can talk. Yeah, it's a very effective way to rehearse. But you can't do that every week too. Then basically what I was, in the end of this, is then after your first rehearsal, you say, okay, what did I miss in my study that I need to check out? So I have to go back and prepare a little bit more. Then what do I have to implement? Well, now I know by hearing them, I know what my implementation needs to be. And then my evaluation is, again, all right, what did they learn and what still haven't they learned? And it's just a constantly spiraling activity that eventually will lead to a performance, and hopefully a good performance. Okay.